when it comes to like contemporary clothing, costume designing contemporary dress is actually it is in some ways more difficult than period, because we all have such specific associations with contemporary dress. We all think that we know what someone might wear in 2008, and sometimes we have a sense of what 2000 was, but our own memory is a little bit faulty. And so there's a lot of emotional, personal attachment to contemporary dress that any costume designer who is working in a contemporary period has to contend with. Clothes seem as if they should be neutral, but they're really not. Clothing, costume, anything that sort of helps one perform oneself dovetails in with the ways in which we understand race and racialization. We can think about fabric and the way fabric is woven. It's like many, many threads weave together this fabric of the world. And so when we're talking about racial fabrication, we always have to remember that there's all these other things that are there woven together. So all of those are in play in this play specifically. So one of the conversations that we had quite a lot about is actually how both race and gender are explored in the play, and the ways in which we can use clothing in order to do that. One of the first conversations that Tinashe and I had was actually about Cynthia's hair, and the ways in which Cynthia's journey in 2000, from working on the factory floor to moving up to middle management. When we first meet Cynthia in 2000, she is working on the factory floor, and she's given the opportunity to apply for a management position, to no longer be on the floor, but be in the office. And once she's forced in a position in which she has to present the company line, and that means firing or furloughing her friends, right? That we could see the toll that this kind of compulsory professionalization is putting on her. So some of this would be a kind of move that happens in terms of she becomes more, her look becomes closer to a kind of corporate drone. In terms of her hair, that it gets sort of tighter or straighter, or less bouncy, obviously less curls or no curls, and that it becomes more and more confined. So even like we were telling this story, we could tell this story through the story of her hair, if it goes from freedom to constraint. Whenever a costume designer begins a play and has like the first meeting with the costume shop manager, it usually is a conversation about like the big costume effects. And that is oftentimes blood. But in the case of this play, one of the big things that we had to talk about was Jason's white supremacist face tattoo, which is the first thing that we see in the first scene of the play. And then it has to go away, and then it has to come back, and then it goes away, and then it comes back again. In part because the amount of time that we have in 2008 is not long enough for Jason to have undergone laser tattoo removal. Before the theater closed, I was in Atlanta doing first fittings for this production, and I did fit the actor who played Jason, and we did have a conversation about the face tattoo, both in terms of just getting a lot of photos of his face and for me to sort of place it on his face. And then we got into a conversation in between him trying on sweatshirts and cargo shorts about what might have motivated him getting this tattoo. In the play, we don't go to the prison. We don't actually see the things that happen. And I think that this choice that Jason makes to find protection, belonging, and affiliation in the prison becomes that much starker when we first meet him in 2000 and understand that he is best friends with Chris. That he has grown up with Chris, that he has grown up with Chris and Cynthia. And so part of the journey that we see is also a journey in which this young man who, grows up nurtured in a kind of multiracial space, ends up in prison because of actions that he engages in, and we get we get a mini story about what it is that he did in prison, how it is that he might have survived prison. All of that comes across with something as like really intense as a neo-Nazi tattoo. I have to say that in doing that kind of research and putting together a folder of images of ex-convicts with these kinds of face tattoos is incredibly intense. But I think that there is such a starkness to it, but also so much storytelling that we get across right there. Some of the storytelling you do, especially in a fitting, happens in terms of accessories. Like you've got all the things together and then you put it on somebody and then you're like, oh wait, there's something missing. And because of the journey that we want Oscar to go to by the end of 2008, where he has ostensibly taken over the bar, where he is taking care of Stan, where he really is a fixture in Reading, Pennsylvania, and we see him in color and pattern and texture, right? One of the storytelling that we had sort of put in there, although I don't think we didn't have a chance to tell Tinashe about it, but that when I was looking at him, I knew the thing that was missing was a wedding ring. This is also a play in which there are a number of failed marriages and failed relationships. There are many exes. People are entangled with one another, but we don't see, but there isn't any sort of real example of sort of happy partnership. Friendships fall apart, relationships fall apart. And so there was something when we finished dressing Oscar that I wanted to sort of, I saw the need to put that touch there. Whether or not that was a story that would be part of the production, I don't know, but there was something about Oscar in 2008 riding this wave up. Something that Lynn Nottage has said in an interview where when she first began interviewing people in Reading, Pennsylvania, she asked them to describe their city. And everybody used the past tense to describe it, that Reading was. And so this prompted me to go into, historical images and photography of the kind of golden era of American factory and industrial life. Some of this was about sort of the glory of machines, and it was always sort of big scale. They had this like high modernist feel, often black and white, really geometric. You'd see like molten coal or ore flowing through panels and people wielding tools and using machinery. And I was interested in what that sort of, how that is nostalgically and celebratorily rendered. And then the other sort of research that I was doing was much more contemporary. Really specifically, the play is set in 2008 and 2000, and it actually moves back in time. So we're always sort of thinking about those two times together, 2000 and 2008. And so for that kind of contemporary research, I really was just pouring through as many newspapers and kind of reportage and documentary photographs as I possibly could. I went through back issues of Reading, Pennsylvania's newspaper, just to get a sense of life and both in terms of factory workers on strike, and what sort of everyday people in this southeast part of Pennsylvania. The kind of work that costumes in a play like Sweat needs to do is always stay just under the surface. Because if you notice the clothes, then I've done something wrong.